What time is it there, David?
9 a.m. It's a beautiful, misty, damp morning, sort of winter morning by the sea. There were sort of bits of foggy patches clinging in the hollows, and there's been a big storm out here over the weekend, and if I open the door, you'd hear the sea roaring because the waves are really big.
Oh my gosh. How far are you from the ocean?
Very close. It's just a few hundred meters. What you're seeing behind me is inland. So we're kind of wedged between a hillside going up where there's all that bush up, that's original native bush up there. And then out in front of me, there's a little bit of land and a couple of little lumps of hill. And then we can see bits of sea in between. And there's a great surf beach right there. It's like 3 minutes walk. So
Oh
perfect.
my gosh. In beautiful, gorgeous New Zealand. What an incredible country.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kick off. Thank you, Ghislaine, for joining us. This is really exciting. I remember the last time that we met was, I think it was 2013 in New York. And you helped us launch my book so far. We did it at Saatchi & Building. That was a really lovely occasion.
I remember that so well. And you know what is the most remarkable about that? It's because I was chatting to you about the book. I actually read your book from cover to cover. Do you know how many designers' books I've done that for? 0. You're
Really?
the only one. You're the only. I'm not a cover to cover kind of reader. I spot around, and I mean, as a result, I feel like I know so much about you, and I remember so much of it because it had quite a made an impact on me because you have a very interesting life.
Remember you said comment something like, every design student should read this.
Oh, and I just feel like every design student should read your book. Happy?
Yeah, thank you.
There we go.
Yeah. So what I thought we'd talk about today is obviously the pressing issues that are kind of facing us in the design industry. And there are sort of 2 aspects to the conversation, I think, which are both sort of very interrelated. One is this issue that everybody's talking about now, working from home. And the other is nature. And I think there's massive overlap in there, and I think which we can sort of discuss as we go on. When we had our kind of pre-chat last week, I remember you saying that even when lockdowns start to ease, you still aren't going to be able to travel to commute very easily because of distancing on commuting. So effectively what we're saying is that this working from home is going to be at least a long time, if not here to stay. How does that affect you?
Yeah, so I'm now in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours outside of New York City, but New York City is my home. It's where my family calls home, and it's where my office is. And we've moved out here. We're lucky enough to have a country home, and we've moved out here. And it's the first time in 37 years or something like that I've had an extended stay in, I mean, I go on vacations, and maybe 6 weeks would be an extravagant length of time for me to be away. We're now, hunkering down here, hitting the 2-month mark and all working remotely. So I think, I'm in touch and Zooming with my office and my crew every day. All day, and they are remarkable, and they are strong, incredible women. And I don't know, New York opens, or starts to reopen on June 8th, so we'll have to see. But a lot of things have happened. I think that this has been a much needed pause for many of us. Obviously, it's horrific what's happened, and Corona has been devastating especially to so many people in New York City, affected so many families. And it's forced us all to kind of take a breather. And I do believe that we're going to learn so much, and we are learning so much about ourselves. We're learning so much about not, caring about all those peripheral things that can really affect you, and just really, I think we've gone down to core values and just assessing some really key things in our life and figuring out what's important and not important. And it's kind of been done for us. We have no choice. So I also think, you know, working from home is going to be something that I think we'll transition to. Some companies will go back to the way things were slowly, but I think many of us will adopt new lifestyles and think about different ways of truly working remotely. You know, we've all been forced into this. This is like boot camp. And we're doing months of boot camp so that when we come out of this, we're going to be trained and ready to tackle this. And then also, I think a huge aspect of this is that everybody knows each other better. You know, do you remember like years ago, maybe 2 years ago, there was a reporter and he was doing a reporting from home, and his 2 kids tumbled in the door and his babysitter remember how, and everybody was like aghast how awful that, like, oh my God, how embarrassing. That today would just be like, nobody would even pay attention. People's dogs are barking, kids are like on the lap when you're having meetings, you know what people's homes look like, you know what you look, not everybody's taking a shower first thing. So we've really unmasked in many ways as well and become more vulnerable in that way. We are showing so much more of home has become acceptable. Home has become an acceptable place to work.
Are we going to retain that and that much more casual, relaxed way of being ourselves? Are we going to retain that? Or as we start to sort of bring design into it, are we going to start to sort of manipulate that and make it look like sort of advertising again? So we're sort of, how do we sort of retain the honesty of it without making it sort of scruffy?
I think
designers.
I think that professional is now you have a different way of understanding the word professional, right? It used to be like, if you weren't decked out and your background wasn't an office or you didn't look official, you were making excuses about working from home or something like that. So now I think that professional, for the time being, I don't know, will it go back to having to make excuses if you are not, working from the office? I don't know. I hope that we find a more lenient way of working. And I think, I don't know, when it's time to go back and you're still at home, will we still be accepting of that and understanding of that? I don't know.
I'm just curious about how we as designers, and you specifically as interior designer, how you address that. I mean, when you're thinking about helping people kind of address their homes and the spaces they're working in at homes, what are you trying to sort of achieve? Are you trying to sort of achieve a smart office kind of look like what they had before? Or are you saying, no, this is not an office, this is a home, but we still need to make it look presentable when you're on the screen? What's your approach to that?
Well, I think that it allows for a lot more sort of your personality to come out. And I think I think that home offices, there is going to be a concentration on getting that home office up and getting, or even for people who have very small apartments, figuring out ways to set up like they're doing now so that so people can minimize office space and have smaller offices and sort of rely on people working from home. So we're right now working on a project where the clients have just purchased a house. They are getting out of New York City. They had a home somewhere else, but too far away, and couldn't get there in time, so can't fly out there anymore. And they were always thinking about buying a home outside of the city, and they just, they did it. They're closing, and we're working right now just getting them furniture as quickly as possible for some of the essential rooms. And one of the most essential rooms is the office, so that the husband works in finance, and he wants to be able to have a place so that he can work from and he can feel great about. So that just goes to show that in a way this is taking priority, that a workspace, and I think it should reflect who you are. I think it's beautiful that it gets to reflect who you are outside of the office.
But the other thing I think that's really for me exciting too this issue of nature. I remember you saying again when we chatted last week that you'd been looking around at growing things. You were planting seeds and watching things grow. And I've heard stories of like in London when people were let out finally from their confinement in their homes, they rushed to the parks, and for a while there were too many, so they closed the parks, and there's an outrage, and people were saying, no, I've got to get into the park. And I think people are realizing that how important nature is in our lives, how we need this sort of greenery, the beauty of that. And I think that's a wonderful thing that's come out of it, is that it's now forcing us as designers to address that. How do we allow that to happen much more? How do we bring that aspect of nature into our homes that enriches people?
Yeah, well, I think, it's like, it's a living thing, and when I was in New York City and I wasn't allowed out and we were confined to our home while we were there, we spent about a month of the pandemic, we spent in New York City. And, I don't have a pet. I have 2 children. They're very cute pets. But I started to plant seeds. I would, a red pepper, instead of throwing away the seeds, just the idea that you want to nurture and that you want to feel like life is still happening. And that was a small way on my windowsill that I could have that gratification of feeling like something was growing and something was happening while we were stuck inside. And, and now you just struck, now that I'm out in the country, I'm just struck with how beautiful and perfect nature is, despite all the drama of the, robin's eggs falling down and, oh my God, there was a, rainfall last night and now the robin's eggs are crushed on the ground. And, I actually have started to be like a crazy person. Like there are lots of birds in my yard. We have 3 acres. I actually know which birds are which. I know Laurie, who has the nest in the laurel bush. I know my groundhogs have babies. I'm like so keenly aware of, the deer that run through here, that I know which ones they are, and I know their patterns, and I'm starting to really have this connection with nature that I've never been able to have before, because I just haven't been here long enough. I've always, rushed in and out on weekends and 4 days. And it's really settling, and it's really gives me so much calm, just to look at something that is so powerful and so beautiful, and just, it is remarkable. And sometimes you just are not slowing down enough to see it all.
So how do you address that in your work? I mean, if it's important to you, presumably, I mean, I'd like to say it's important to many people, perhaps more than who realize it. So how do, apart from just sort of having trees, planting trees, or having pot plants in your house, I mean, that's obviously an easy thing, but I think there's more to it than that. I mean, how do we bring the essence of nature into every aspect of our design, not just sort of token things here and there that kind of, I think we've suffered too long for the sort of the imposed regime of minimalism, which is these sort of cold white cubes and boxes and very austere, and we've kind of come to believe that this is the best architecture, it's the best design, has to be like this because it's in all the magazines, and we kind of go with it. But I don't think it is. I think it's hurting our psyche, and I think we're realizing how important aspects of nature are. So how can we sort of redirect design to be more responsive to our innate needs?
I think maybe learning the connection from an early age between what you feel deep inside, emotionally, how you react, that it's not just being inspired by another architect or what went before, but really digging down deep and looking inward more, and responding to yourself emotionally more. I know as I get older that I have become more in tune with my, internal voice, and I listen to myself more. I know that, I trust that I know the answers to things more than I did before. And, but sometimes it's just all about being still and just, being quiet and listening to yourself, and just not being, I think, this is what this pause is like. We're not this frenetic, constant, just being, just having time to just sit down and think quietly is something that, for living in New York City, is not something that I'm used to. And I think that whole rat race and the craziness, and it's exhilarating. It's so exciting, and there's so much. But I think looking inward is going to be really important.
So what about the tools that having gained this sort of insight through being more responsive, being more open, looking inward, as you say, are you signing up to well building, which is kind of like creating a structure for bringing greater awareness of nature in healthy spaces that we live in, or do you do it more intuitively through what you believe yourself?
Okay, so I was skipping and running and jumping through life so fast and having a great time. But all good things must come to an end. And I felt like a couple of years ago, I sort of crashed. I was just like, this is too much. It was, overwhelming for me. So I really started, noticing how important it is for me to just have that stillness in my life, and learn to meditate, and learn to do yoga, and learn to listen to my own voice. And everybody has their personalities, and I am outwardly quite confident, and there are lots of aspects of me that are outrageous and confident, but there's also an inner voice that is much quieter and less confident, and less, has more questions. And I feel like everybody, young students, we just need to, there's too much going on. We just need to quieten down and listen to ourselves, and listen to things, and take time with things, and just slow down. So I think it's just, I honestly just think it's the turning everything down.
Yeah.
And just, everybody's in different stages of their lives, and this is the stage that I'm in right now. But I think it would have served me well to have somebody teach me how to just shut up for a bit and listen a bit more when I was younger.
I sort of compared that kind of part of the design process to, we live on the surface. It's like water, and when the sun's on the surface of the water, it's all sparkly and ripply, and it's very beguiling, and you think that's all there is, and you live in this surface layer because it's so beautiful. Or it's not even beautiful, it's kind of just draws you in. But then if you take a deep breath and you sink, there's a whole other world in there, and that world's our subconscious, and that's where the real creative stuff happens, where you connect and feel, and you understand yourself, and you're not carried along by all that surface clutter and distraction. And absolutely, I think we need, and that's what I think the creative process should be doing, is kind of tuning into that deeper subconscious, which is where it really, really matters. Yeah. But I'm thinking in terms of, sorry, carry on.
I think it's also, it's just not about the creative process, because as we all know, design, and what you and I both do, is 20% design and 80% making it all happen, and managing people, and keeping people happy, and doing the right thing, and getting organized. So I also feel like it's just learning to be a better leader, and a better just a better guide for people you're working with, who are working for you and with you on your team. It just enriches everybody's life, I think, to become a calmer.
So how do you do that? How do you encourage the people on your team to be like that? I'm thinking of other people coming in from outside.
Open book. So everybody knows exactly what I'm going through emotionally. I'm very, very open about, I work with a bunch of women. I'm very open about what, difficult things in life that one has to get through. I'm all about the sharing the exuberation of riding the wave, and and then enjoying that, and knowing that it might crash, and the feeling of that, and getting back up again. And so I think it's just the being very real. I mentor quite a number of young students who sometimes just need an extra push, or just don't have that stuff. Like I know how to do things, and I know that it's so easy for me just to help some people and just go, I'll tell you what to do. You've got to contact this person, say this and this and this, be really done, get this done, get that done, do this. And you know what? It's so often they know that stuff, but they haven't had the experiences yet of going through that. So I think just sharing what I know, and helping, and being a support to young designers has been very gratifying for me as well.
I mean, I get a lot of that too. People asking, what's your advice for young designers? And I really believe, I sort of say to them that I think you have to believe in yourself. I think there's too much looking around you and trying to follow what's happening in the world. You're overcome by all this amazing stuff. I've got to keep up, and I've got to be like them. And you don't. I mean, you lose yourself in that. And then who are you? I think it's far more important to find yourself and speak from your heart. We have a word in New Zealand called taranga waiwai. It's your place to stand. And you learn to find that. And from there, you can speak for yourself and for what your culture is.
Yeah, easier said than done, right?
Yeah, it is.
I think we're very lucky if you found your voice at an early age, and you understand that you may be a little bit different or a little unique, and you can identify what makes you, even if you don't fully understand it, but if you can say, I'm a little different and I kind of like it, and then you can grow from that. That's an amazing gift, because you can really, that's the kernel that starts the whole thing. You can build from that so beautifully. Some people don't have that yet. They don't have.
Yeah. But it's the confidence to go with that. Too often people who are like that say, oh, I'm kind of weird, I'm kind of different, and they're diffident about it, and they hide it. When I say, no, that is you. That's the bit you should be confident in, and giving them the confidence to say it's okay to be weird, to be different. And that's, I think, the best thing we can do to encourage them, is to make them feel, yes, it's okay to be me.
Yeah. So we're encouraging you to be very, very freaky.
Yeah, you bet. So there's another, I really like the phrase that you use in some of your marketing, aesthetics of happiness. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, that was sort of, the whole idea of the aesthetics of happiness sort of started. I actually didn't. I think that I've always been a super happy, bouncy kind of person, very, very optimistic. Naturally so. I still am unbelievably optimistic. And I was really fearless when I was young, and I really felt like I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I came to New York City, and I started designing, and I love color, and I used a lot of color in my work, and people started to say, oh, wow, we always recognize your work because of all the color that you use. And people started saying to me, it's so happy. And then I kind of, yeah, exactly. like not like this. But so I started to, the more people said that to me, I was like, oh yeah, maybe that is something. And then, I started just thinking about what happiness looks like. And happiness is not like, always about bubbles and balloons and that sort of thing. Sometimes it's just feeling innately happy or pleased or content. And, I think it's something that I really work with my clients with, in just really trying to guide them to live in, whether it's homes or offices or hospitality projects or product that we're designing, just to try and bring that across. And you know, happy can be loud and happy can be very quiet and very soft, and you know, it's just different things for different people. And I think I'm also expanding my repertoire and also learning you know, different design languages, and learning to have a softer voice, and to you know, to expand my material palette, to be more loving in the way that I design. I guess it's just a maturity, and you know, with design, you keep on learning and you keep on getting better, and you keep on getting a deeper understanding of what you're doing and of yourself, and then ultimately with your clients and your vendors and who you work with.
Mm-hmm. But the link with aesthetics, I think that's the interesting thing. I mean, I understand happiness and joy and being
Mm-hmm.
positive. But you're specifically saying there's an aesthetic in that.
And it's a very personal aesthetic. I think it's a very personal feeling that you try and capture for your clients. You try and capture what makes them feel good, what makes them happy. Why is it that you walk in to the house or to the space or to whatever you're designing and you just feel good? And it's all about, you know, in my mind, it's a very subtle thing, but it's a very difficult thing to achieve, because it's all about proportion. It's about use of color. It's about scale. It's about balancing. It's like the composition of a painting, like, you know, trying to balance things out so you don't walk into a room and, you know, you're feeling like you're swaying one way. But there's so many things that play into that. And that's just years and years and years of really honing my craft and understanding why you feel at ease, or why you feel excited, or why you feel what you feel when you walk into a room, and how is that all balanced. You know, it's also about art, how art activates. And so you've got to pull back the interiors, the balance. You know, we also balance our interiors so much with feeling that there's architectural pieces. You first get your architecture in, and then you start layering and adding your more playful pieces. And it's a whole, you know, something that you learn to be good at, and you learn from your mistakes, and you learn what didn't work so well, and you know, you keep on going.
But there's two things happening there, because you started talking about understanding the effectively the happiness of the client, and then there's yours, and they might be different. So how much do you work with theirs, or how much do you impose yours on that?
I don't think it's about my happiness. My happiness, I think, is about working through the process of the design process with the client and keeping it super positive. I mean, it's not always, believe me, but you know, I would be lying if I said everything was just cheery and everything goes 100% perfect. It doesn't. But I try to make the process as easy and simple and positive as I can for the client. And that's why it's so important to have a good connection with the client, and to feel like, you know what, there are thousands of designers out there. Don't pick me because I design. Pick me because you look at my portfolio and go, I can feel the soul in this.
Yeah.
And I want that soul. I want that energy. I want that feeling. I like what this person is doing. I like the way that this person thinks about interiors. So that's when you if you have that connection, you're more than halfway there. Without that real connection of, you've got to be able to understand your client. So you've got to get into that client's mind, and you've got to think, okay, everything that I know about this person, or everything that I know about these people. And this is so helpful when we're doing multiple projects, and we've done multiple projects for clients where I can't tell you, you know, we've worked on so many. We have several clients that we've just done multiple projects for, and they keep on, they come back to us, I think, because we've created that language. We understand that, yes, she's sensitive to fabrics, and she wants soft fabrics. It's really important to her. And eclectic mix of finishes, or you know, we know all of that. We've been through, I'm going to use the word boot camp again, but we've been through boot camp with them, because your first project is always a bit of a boot camp. And so when you start working with them more and more, I feel like you can really understand them, and you can understand how can you make this space that you're creating as positive as you possibly can, so that they walk in and you just feel good. You just simply feel good. You can't quite pinpoint it, but there's just a great vibe. And it's the vibe that you want to live, because everybody has a different vibe. You know, like I mean, I can't live in all the houses that I design for my clients. Like, they're not how I would want to live. But I love doing them. And it's like, so often it's like theater in a way. You're creating these environments for these people, you know, that you've met, and they're all characters and they all have personality, and they're all, so every project is so incredibly personal that you really want to dig deep, and you want to understand what makes them tick and what's going to make for a happy home.
We've kind of done half an hour. We've put a call out, John's put a call out for Q&A. If anybody isn't seeing their chat window and they've got any questions they want to fire at either of us, put them through on the chat, and we'll address them. At the moment there aren't any, so I'll just carry on a little bit. I was kind of interested in while you were talking about that, I was thinking in my mind, because I'm different to you, you're designing specifically for a particular client. We're designing for everybody, or at least, you know, the people who get it of what we do. So we've got to sort of look more at what are the common denominators of what makes the thing that they're both trying to achieve, but we've got to make it more open to the number of people who are able to respond to it. So in that kind of design process you're going through, what are the sort of common denominators that kind of define that aspect of design that you're trying to create, and that you can apply to kind of more generally to products like in the way that we do? Is that possible to kind of answer?
Well, you know, I know what you're saying, because I think also that we also design product, and I know that I think it's a really difficult thing to do, but I think that for you just stay with what is truly in your heart, right? Like your work, you can see, oh my God, it's so pure in that way, that it's really coming. You look at your work and you can understand where it's coming from. I think I'm probably in more kind of places and having to be a lot more flexible in the way that I think, in the way that I react. You have to I think there's always a core of who you are as a designer and what you believe and how you design. So, you know, I'm not one of those designers who can do French provincial and then, you know, American, like, you know, so for me, it's just one integral part of my brain that I function from. But I think you have to be somewhat more adaptable and not as much of an artist sometimes when you're designing, like what I do.
Yeah. There's a question here which is sort of related to that. Do you think empathy in design process will be more of a priority after this episode, after what we're going through?
I think it should have been I think it should be part of the process no matter what. I think that maybe people are more sensitive. People are more in tune. We haven't touched each other. Like, I think that we're going to appreciate just being able to go up to somebody and just shake their hand or touch them or not, be masked or not. So I think it is we're going to be more empathetic, but I don't know how long it will last, you know, like everything. You get used to the normal. It will be a new normal, but I hope we're more empathetic. I hope we are. I think we will be.
I mean, isn't that the sort of the basis of what we're doing is empathy? We're trying to create empathy, trying to create mutual feeling together through the spaces and the objects which we create.
Absolutely. I think it all comes down to that. Ultimately, what we're doing is that it's all about what you feel on your heart. And it is a business, no doubt, but it's those connections with the people are a huge part of that.
Yeah. And that relates to what we were saying before about sort of not being carried away by what's going on around you, but by speaking from yourself, and that sense of feeling coming through, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the problems of the design today is there's too much ego everywhere in it, isn't there? It just gets in the way.
Yeah, I think remaining humble and uh, you know, staying curious and just knowing that you don't know even the half of it is really helpful.
Mm. Yeah. There's one question, this more general question about future cities. Do we think that future cities will need to be more self-supportive, more integrated, less part of the world picture, but more local? And how will
Oh,
that take effect?
yeah, I think cities will absolutely change. I think I think there is going to be, you know, nobody expected this to happen. Who thought this would happen to us in our lifetime, you know? And, you know, look at, we're going back to New York City at some point, but what's going to happen with mass transit? What's going to happen? You know, what is going to happen? I know that a lot of people, or there's fascinating studies going on with the city of the future and what cities look like, and reimagining cities in a more idealistic way, and in a way that we might, or where they might run a little smoother, is on many people's minds. I think this will, I think this will make people realize that the time is now for that. You know, it's not something that's going to happen in the future. This is happening now. It could easily happen again. You know, there's so much going on in the US, especially at this very time. It's a tumultuous time here. I think we're all going to have to rethink a lot about yeah, how we live, and yes, cities will be affected. There's no doubt. We will not be going back to New York City the way that it was, and I don't know if we ever will.
Looking in Europe and what's happening to the cities there is that the demand for outdoor seating has grown because they can't sit inside. So they're taking over more pavements, and they're making more bike lanes. So they're pushing the cars out to make it nicer to sit outside. I mean, it's fantastic. It's what we should have been doing years ago. I mean, I think it's outrageous.
Remember how that could never happen? I know that in New York City, they were trying to close roads and make only, but I don't think those were ever going to, the chance of those getting past, where people are like, what? Walk on a street or only bike on a street? What about the cars? What about all the deliveries? And you know what? Look what happens now. We have no choice. We have to go to plan B or C or D or E or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, everybody manages, right?
Yeah.
This is our ability to pivot and change things that are not working. Have to be looked at, and seeing, you know, people are stuck in their ways. Now look, whoever thought that we would never be, that all of us would be working from home? That's crazy. Nobody could even imagine that. And you know, we're doing it.
Yeah. So I think that's a great kind of optimistic note maybe to end on. We've covered the important things, and it's a good way to end. So thank you. There's one quick question just coming. Do you think commercial and office spaces are going to reduce in the coming days? Well, I think we sort of covered that. We're just basically saying that yes, they are, aren't they? And they're not going to be so cold and impersonal. They're going to be, if there are office spaces, that because we've learned all this, how nice it is to work in these environments at home, we're going to want that for those ones that do get back to offices.
Yeah, and I think that was happening already. You know, I don't think people were, you know, people are not accepting of, you know, the cubicles of the 60s, and you know, office spaces were changing very rapidly, and people are more interested in being in warmer environments. And you know, that I think this will break that down even further. I think that we will break down, I think offices, I think workplace will become even more personal, where we can talk to each other about our lives and how we're feeling, and how I think I do think that we just will see people differently after you've seen, you know, after you've seen your colleagues in their home environment. It changes the way you interact. It absolutely does. It breaks down a lot.
So great, let's keep the change happening, just keep the momentum going, and do all the good things we want to do right now while we got the opportunity.
I think so. I think so. I wish I was there right now and I could just go and dive in your ocean right now. That looks really beautiful out there.
Yeah. I hope I'll get into the sea and have a surf this afternoon.
Good.
So thank you, Ghislaine. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure chatting with you, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. So stay well, stay safe.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll meet up again some point in the future.
Okay. See you in New York soon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, thank you everyone. This is John Cook from wakaNINE signing off. Appreciate you guys attending today. And if you've got colleagues that you might want to share this with, please check out our website. We will be posting the video online in a couple of days. Take care. All the best. Kia ora.